You're not paranoid. You're not imagining things. You are being played, and it happens far more often than you realize. The most dangerous part is that manipulation doesn't announce itself. It hides in the smallest gestures, the subtle pauses, the conversations that feel ordinary but leave you unsettled. Every favor you feel cornered into, every glance that lingers too long, every silence that weighs heavier than it should, none of it is accidental. Behind the curtain of daily life, people, even those closest to you, are using tactics you don't see to bend your will, guide your choices, and reshape the way you see yourself. Nietzsche warned us, manipulation isn't always brutal or loud. It often wears charm like a mask. It disguises itself as kindness, as empathy, as intimacy. It's delivered with a smile, not a scowl. And that's why it works. Because you don't see it until it's already rewired your behavior. Today, we walk into that shadow and expose some of the most common ways people twist your mind without you realizing it. Once you recognize these tactics, you'll stop being a pawn in their game. Let's begin. There's a look you know too well. The one someone gives you after you dare to say no. It's not outright anger. It's not rage. It's disappointment. That quiet, heavy silence, as if you've just betrayed them in some unthinkable way. That's the gill hook. It doesn't attack your reasoning. It attacks your morality. And that's why it's so effective. We are wired to want to be seen as good. Nietzsche saw morality itself as a construct, designed not only to encourage virtue, but to keep you in line, to tame your impulses, to keep you acceptable to the herd. So when someone uses guilt, they aren't actually arguing with your logic. They make you argue with yourself. Suddenly, you're asking questions you never meant to. Am I selfish? Was I too harsh? Did I go too far? But that's the illusion. What they've done is hand their discomfort to you like a burden, and now your instinct to relieve it is turned against you. That is how guilt bends your boundaries. It doesn't need to shout. It just needs you to care. And here's the key. Your goodness is not measured by someone else's approval. If your no shrinks in the shadow of their silence, they win. If you start justifying your choice, explaining yourself, apologizing for protecting your energy, you surrendered. But when you hold the line without flinching, when you refuse to explain, refuse to justify, and refuse to carry the weight of their disappointment, you take back the power. Their discomfort is not your emergency. Remember this. Saying yes to others often means saying no to yourself. And that's not kindness. That's self-betrayal. But guilt is only one weapon. Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling like somehow you were the problem, even though you were the one who was mistreated? That's not confusion. That's engineering. That's the shifting mirror. Here's how it unfolds. You confront someone for lying, for a cruel remark, or for breaking your trust. You point out their behavior. But instead of addressing it, they pivot. They say, "You're too sensitive. You're always making drama. I can't talk to you without being attacked." And suddenly, you're not holding them accountable. You're defending yourself. The crime scene is inverted. This is emotional sleight of hand. They don't deny what happened. They deny your perception of it. They don't challenge the facts. They challenge you, your memory, your emotions, your reality. And in that fog, you lose, because the brain craves peace. It wants resolution. And when someone destabilizes your certainty, your mind will grab onto anything, even false blame, just to stop the chaos. That's the trick. Nietzsche said the will to power does not always roar. Often, it whispers. The manipulator doesn't need to crush you. They just need you to doubt yourself. So how do you break the spell? By refusing to chase their story. Anchor yourself to the moment. Anchor yourself to the facts. Anchor yourself to how you felt before they spun the mirror. Say the words, "This is not about my feelings. This is about your actions." And then stop. Don't explain. Don't argue. Let silence do the work. Manipulators thrive on distortion, and silence starves them of oxygen. Hold steady, even if your knees shake. Because when the mirror breaks, you finally see who was holding it. Now, there's a form of openness that isn't openness at all. A vulnerability that isn't shared for connection, but deployed for control. It begins with someone bearing their soul, an intimate confession, a story of trauma, a raw admission. It feels real. It feels deep. You lower your guard. But beneath the surface, something feels off. That's because not all vulnerability is honest. Some use it as bait. This is the faux vulnerability trap. Instead of connection, it's a shortcut to your empathy, a way to fast-track your loyalty before you even know who they really are. And once you're hooked, you feel the pressure. I can't walk away now. They've trusted me with their pain. I owe them my presence. But real vulnerability does not come with a debt. Why does this manipulation work so well? Because when someone presents themselves as broken, it flips the power dynamic. They look small, you feel strong, but also responsible. Nietzsche saw this clearly. Power often hides inside performance of powerlessness. Their weakness is a mask. Their tears are a leash. They aren't asking for comfort. They're demanding emotional debt. How do you spot it? Watch the timing. Real intimacy unfolds slowly. It's mutual. It carries no agenda. But when someone shares something heavy at the very beginning, then immediately asks for your silence, your time, your protection, stop. Ask yourself, do I feel connected or do I feel cornered? If their openness makes you feel trapped, that is not intimacy. That is entrapment. Stand firm. Your empathy is not a weapon to be used against you. True connection invites. It never coerces. But manipulation does not stop here. It evolves. It grows quieter. It becomes sharper than guilt, harder to spot than blame, more poisonous than false vulnerability. And once you see it, you'll realize just how often it has been steering your choices, without you even noticing. It starts with words you've heard too many times. Let me think about it. Maybe next week. I just need a little time. On the surface, it sounds like caution, like patience. But you already know deep down, they never intended to follow through. This is a delay loop. It is one of the most subtle yet powerful tactics. It gives you the illusion of progress while keeping you trapped in place. It works because it feeds you just enough hope to stop you from walking away. They dangle the possibility of change like a carrot on a stick, and the moment you question it, you're told you're being impatient, demanding, unreasonable. And so you wait, and wait, and wait. Nietzsche would say those who cannot act invent excuses to mask their cowardice. Behind every maybe later is usually a no. They're too weak to say out loud. What's really being stolen is not their commitment. It's your time, your life, your momentum. How do you cut through it? By refusing to negotiate with uncertainty. Say it once. Say it clearly. Then step back. If their response is hesitation, that hesitation is your answer. Take their delay as your closure. Because your piece is not a puzzle piece they can rearrange endlessly. And then comes another attack, one even quieter, comparison. You weren't competing, but suddenly you feel like you've already lost. It sounds like feedback, maybe even encouragement, but it isn't. It's poison disguised as advice. Sarah handled this so much better. Most people would have done it by now. You're not like the others. I've seen people far more disciplined. At first, it seems harmless, but what they've planted is quiet comparison, a war on your confidence. They weaponize your natural desire to belong. Nietzsche warned that comparison is often used by the mediocre to chain the exceptional. They don't need to insult you directly. They just need to praise someone else in your presence. And that's enough to make you doubt yourself. What follows? You begin performing. You try harder, but not out of joy, not out of purpose, out of desperation, to reclaim approval, to feel worthy again. And yet the goalpost always shifts. That's the design. The cure is simple but difficult. Stop running invisible races. Stop competing with ghosts. Your worth is not measured against shadows. And you don't have to keep proving yourself to someone who thrives on making you feel lesser. The moment you refuse to play their game, the comparison collapses. And so, piece by piece, the mask begins to fall. But there's still more games, darker and even harder to defend against. Games that don't just twist your perception of others, but twist your perception of yourself. And that's where the manipulation becomes lethal. There's a silence that feels heavier than words. A silence that isn't peace. It's punishment. You know it well. The sudden withdrawal, the deliberate absence, the refusal to engage. This is not distance born from needing space. This is the Cold War manipulation, the silent treatment. At first, you think it's about them. Maybe they're tired. Maybe they're upset. Maybe you said the wrong thing. So you step forward, you soften, you bend. You reach out again and again, offering pieces of yourself just to break the ice. And with every attempt, you hand them more control. That's the point. Silence is one of the sharpest blades in manipulation because it forces you to speak their lines. You fill the gaps with apologies. You invent sins you didn't commit. You shrink just to earn back the warmth they deliberately stole. Nietzsche saw it clearly. Absence can be louder than presence. And in relationships poisoned by manipulation, silence is never empty. It's a stage, a performance. They know you cannot stand the void, so they weaponize it. How do you fight back? By refusing to dance. Let the silence remain theirs, not yours. Don't chase. Don't explain. Don't perform rituals of self-blame just to win scraps of attention. You break the cycle not by shouting into their silence, but by making your own silence stronger. When they see you no longer crawl for connection, the performance ends. Because silence, when returned, becomes a mirror, and the manipulator hates nothing more than seeing themselves reflected. But silence is not their only mask. Sometimes, they cloak their control in generosity. They shower you with favors, gifts, kindness that feels overwhelming. You think, how could I question someone who's done so much for me? But this is not generosity. This is a debt trap. They give not to free you, but to bind you. Every gesture, every gift, every "I did this for you" is another chain. And when the time comes, they cash it in. After all I've done, you owe me. Suddenly, your choices are not choices. They're repayments. Nietzsche despised false charity because it was never about the recipient. It was about the giver's hidden hunger for control. True, giving asks for nothing in return. But the manipulator's giving is a bargain you never agreed to. The way out is brutal honesty with yourself. When someone offers you more than feels natural, ask, does this come with strings? Am I free to refuse later? If the answer is no, then their generosity is not a gift. It's a weapon, and you must treat it as such. Still, some tactics cut even deeper. They don't just manipulate your choices. They manipulate your identity. They craft a version of you that exists only in their eyes, and they make you fight endlessly to live up to it. This is a pedestal trap. At first, it feels intoxicating. They tell you you're different, special, better than the rest. They place you high above the crowd. But what goes up must come down. The pedestal is not built for admiration. It's built for control. Because once you're there, you're terrified of falling. You censor yourself, contort yourself, betray yourself just to maintain the image they crafted. Nietzsche warned of idols, because every idol eventually becomes a prison. When someone worships you too quickly, too intensely, they are not seeing you. They are seeing a projection. And when you inevitably fail to match that impossible image, the fall is brutal. Admiration turns into contempt, and you're left broken on the floor of their expectations. The solution? Step down before they push you. Refuse the pedestal. If someone elevates you unnaturally fast, if their praise feels intoxicating but hollow, reject it. True respect is steady, earned, consistent, not a firework that burns out in silence. Don't be their idol. Be real, even if it disappoints them. Especially if it disappoints them. Now, let's peel back another mask. One even subtler. The manipulator doesn't always need to demand or guilt or flatter. Sometimes, they simply overwhelm you. Too many texts, too many questions, too many emotions poured on you all at once. This is flooding. The tactic is simple. Overload your system so you cannot think clearly. They bury you in their problems, their needs, their drama, until your only instinct is to comply, just to end the storm. You agree not because you want to, but because resistance feels impossible under the weight of their intensity. Nietzsche would call this the tyranny of chaos. Because when the world around you is unstable, your mind craves order. And if the only way to find that order is by submitting, you will submit. That's the trap. How do you resist? By slowing the game down. Refuse urgency. Refuse immediacy. Say, I need time to think. I'll answer later. Force space back into the conversation. Manipulators thrive in fast-moving chaos. Slow them down, and their advantage dissolves. But there's one more tactic, one Nietzsche himself hinted at often: moral superiority. The manipulator positions themselves as enlightened one, the more rational, the more spiritual, the one who knows better. And by implication, you are always lesser, always catching up, always guilty of not being enough. This is a halo mask. It doesn't matter what you do. It's never on their level. They are the patient one, the wise one, the forgiving one. And you are the flawed, the fragile, the student forever in their shadow. It is insidious because it doesn't feel like an attack. It feels like a lesson. They correct you softly. They forgive you for sins you didn't commit. They show you the better way. And every time, you shrink a little more. But Nietzsche rejected the false saints of morality. He knew that those who claim the highest ground often do so only to look down on others. The halo is not light. It is a chain. And the only way to break it is brutal clarity. Do not accept moral debts you did not create. Do not allow someone else to be your judge. Their wisdom may sound holy, but if it leaves you small, it is poison. By now, the mask should be slipping. You see the silent punishments, the false generosity, the pedestals, the floods, the halos. You see how much of this is not love, not care, not connection, but control. But we are not done, because the darkest manipulations are still ahead. They do not just twist your perception of others. They twist your very sense of reality. They blur the line between truth and lie until you don't even trust yourself. And once they do that, they own you. Nietzsche warned, whoever controls perception controls power. And when you no longer believe your own eyes, your own memory, your own instincts, you are no longer free. The most lethal tactics are still waiting in the shadows. And once you see them, you'll never see people the same way again. There's a point where manipulation stops being about bending your choices and starts being about erasing your reality. This is the deepest cut. The place where control doesn't just guide you, it redefines you. And the most dangerous part is, once you reach this stage, you no longer question them. You question yourself. It begins with subtle distortions. You remember an argument happening one way. They insist it happen another. You recall their words clearly. They deny ever saying them. You feel hurt, but they laugh and say, you're imagining things. It's small at first, almost trivial. But over time, the weight builds. They plant seeds of doubt in your memory, your feelings, your judgment, until one day, you are no longer certain of anything. This is the black hole of manipulation, gaslighting. Nietzsche understood the fragility of perception. He said there are no facts, only interpretations. And in the hands of a manipulator, that truth becomes a weapon. Because if all reality is interpretation, then the one who controls the interpretation controls reality itself. That is what gaslighting does. It replaces your world with theirs. The most terrifying thing about gaslighting is not that they lie to you. It's that they make you lie to yourself. You rewrite your own memories just to keep the peace. You bury your instincts because they convince you those instincts are flawed. And soon, the voice in your head that once guided you becomes an echo of their voice. That is total control. How do you break free? By anchoring to evidence. By recording what happened, writing down what was said, keeping track of your own perceptions outside their reach. Gaslighting thrives in the fog of forgetting. Bring light into that fog. Write your truth in stone. So when they try to rewrite your story, you can point to the record and say, no, this happened. This is real. I know what I lived. But there's another tactic, just as deadly but quieter. The manipulator doesn't always erase your reality. Sometimes, they rewrite your identity. It begins with labels. They call you selfish when you assert yourself, difficult when you resist, crazy when you express emotion. And slowly, you begin to carry those labels as if they were truths. They are not just controlling what you do. They are controlling who you believe you are. Nietzsche despised labels. He believed the self was not fixed, not defined by society's chains. But manipulators know if they name you, they can tame you. They don't need to cage your body if they can cage your mind with words. Resisting this requires ruthless defiance. When they label you, don't defend. Don't argue. Don't explain. Simply refuse the identity. Say, "That is your word, not mine," and then walk away. Because the moment you start proving you are not selfish, not crazy, not difficult, you've already lost. You're fighting inside the frame they built for you. And their frame is always a trap. Now we step into one of the darkest games of all. Triangulation. You may think your relationship is between two people, but manipulators know the fastest way to destabilize you is by adding a third. A friend, an ex, a coworker, even a stranger. They bring this third person into the conversation. Sometimes directly, sometimes just by suggestion, until you feel you are no longer enough. They say things like, "Other people don't have this problem with me," or "I was talking to someone who understands me better." Suddenly, you're not just dealing with them. You're competing with an invisible rival. Your attention shifts from holding your boundaries to trying to prove your worth. This is triangulation, the art creating insecurity through comparison. Nietzsche wrote that people often invent enemies not to fight them, but to control their friends. That's what triangulation is. It's not about the third person. It's about you. It's about putting you in a race you never agreed to run. How do you escape? By refusing to compete. When they bring in another name, don't defend yourself. Don't try to outshine the ghost. Simply say, then go to them. And let silence hang. Because triangulation only works if you step onto the stage. Refuse the stage, and the performance collapses. But here lies the final, cruelest trick. Manipulators don't just distort your memory, your identity, or your relationships. They weaponize your deepest fear, abandonment. They know you crave connection, that beneath your defenses, there is a hunger not to be alone, and so they use it against you. They threaten to leave, not always with words, sometimes with subtle signals, pulling away affection, withdrawing touch, creating uncertainty. And suddenly you feel desperate. You start doing things you swore you'd never do. You compromise, you beg, you chase just to stop them from disappearing. This is the abandonment lever, and it is devastating because it targets your survival instinct. Humans are wired for connection. Exile was once a death sentence, and somewhere deep inside, your nervous system still believes it is. That's why the threat of loss feels unbearable. Nietzsche said loneliness is the fate of the strong. He knew that to rise above the herd, you must endure the weight of solitude, and that is the only way to beat this tactic. You must make peace with the possibility of walking alone. You must train yourself to say, if you leave, then leave. I will not collapse. The paradox is this. The moment you are no longer terrified of losing them, they lose all control over you, because a chain of abandonment only binds those who fear solitude. And so we come to the truth. Manipulation is not always loud. It is not always violent. More often, it is subtle, soft, disguised as love, disguised as care, disguised as wisdom. But beneath every mask lies the same hunger, control. Nietzsche believed the will to power is inescapable. Every human seeks it. But when that will is twisted, when it hides in shadows, when it bends others through deception, it becomes poison. And if you do not see it, you will drink it. But once you learn to recognize it, something changes. You stop doubting yourself. You stop chasing approval. You stop surrendering your reality. You begin to see every mask, every silence, every compliment, every guilt trip for what it truly is. And in that moment, the manipulator's greatest weapon dies, because their power was never real. It only existed in your blindness. The truth is this. You do not need their approval. You do not need their affection. You do not need their version of reality. You have your own. And once you claim it, you are untouchable. Nietzsche once said, become who you are. That is the final answer. To resist manipulation, you must become sovereign over yourself. Stand in your truth, even if it leaves you alone. Hold your boundaries, even if it makes you disliked. Trust your perception, even if they call you mad. Because freedom is not found in being loved by others. It is found in no longer needing to be. And when you reach that point, when their guilt cannot bend you, their silence cannot break you, their praise cannot trap you, you are free, truly free.